So the last way to factor is the old guess and check. So there's lots of different ways that you can learn how to factor by guessing and checking. Now, guessing and checking, it sounds like a long process. Typically, the easiest way is to find some sort of method that makes sense to you. Okay, so the one that I want to look at today is called divide and slide. Okay, it is not the end all be all of methods of how to factor. Some of you might factor with a box method, some of you might have factored before with a table. So if you already know how to factor with this form, then that's fine. Okay, but when we factor like this, what we're looking for is ax squared plus bx plus c. So we're going to have three terms and we want to be able to factor. Okay, so we're going to look at a couple examples of this. The first one should start off pretty easy, and then we're going to jump into something that, because there's a number at the very beginning, it kind of might trip us up a bit. Okay, so let's look at some easy ones. So let's start off, let's say we have x squared plus 7x plus 12. So in this case scenario, the easiest thing to do, you want to look at the last term and the middle term, and you want to ask yourself, what multiplies to be the last number and adds to be the middle number? So I want to come up with two numbers that multiply to 12. So sometimes people will make a little chart here and they say, okay, what numbers are going to multiply to 12? So let's list them out. 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4. And then we want to add them together. Well, 1 plus 12 is 13, 2 plus 6 is 8, 3 plus 4 is 7. Oh, look, I'm supposed to add to 7, multiply to 12, found it. 3 times 4. So my answer would be x plus 3 and x plus 4. Okay, so that's what we call kind of our table method. Let's look at another one here. Some of you are thinking, well, I could have factored that without it. Okay, and that's perfect. Some of you are probably really good at factoring. So let's look at another one. We've got x squared minus 2x minus 24. Okay, so now I want to come up with numbers that are going to multiply to 24. But instead of adding, I want to subtract. I'm subtracting because my 24 is negative. Okay, like last time I added because my 12 was positive. So I want to multiply to 24. So 1 and 24, 2 and 12. Let's see, 3 and 8, 4 and 6. All right, now this time I'm going to subtract. So 24 minus 1 is 23. 12 minus 2 is 10. 8 minus 3 is 5. 6 minus 4 is 2. And, oh, there it is. There's my 2. Now I want a negative 2. So that means instead of saying 6 minus 4, I want to say 4 minus 6. Right? So I'm going to have x with a positive 4 and x with a negative 6. All right, so I can use this kind of table to help me. Now, some of you just might know. When you look at the problem, say we have x squared plus 6x minus 27. Some of you in your head, you might be able to say, okay, the numbers that multiply to 27, and because it's negative, they're going to subtract to 6. You might be able to say, oh, well, I know that's going to be a positive 9 and a negative 3, because 9 times negative 3 is negative 27, and 9 minus 3 is 6. Okay, I've got it. Some of you might be able to do that in your head. Some of you might need to make a table. Okay, so pretty doable, pretty easy, if you will, when there is no number in front of my x squared. So notice I had no number in front every time. So what if we had something where there's a number in front? That kind of changes the game because I can't just look at the last two numbers anymore because now there's a number in front that matters. So let's say we had something like 7x squared minus 29x plus 4. So now it's not enough to just look at the last number and say, well, what multiplies to 4 and adds to 29, because there is no number that's going to do that. So this is where I want us to kind of look at this idea of divide and slide. So what we want to do, and I don't know why they don't actually call it multiply, divide, and slide, because that's really what we're doing. We're going to multiply first. So I'm going to take this 7 and I'm going to multiply it by the 4. So that's going to give me x squared minus 29x plus 28, because 7 times 4 is 28. Now it looks like what we were just doing. So now I'm going to say, okay, well, I want numbers that multiply to 28, and they're going to add up to 29. So I want 1, 28, 2 and 14, 4 and 7. So 28 and 1 is 29, 14 and 2 is 16, 7 and 4 is 11. Well, there it is. There's my 1 and 28 gives me 29. If I want negative, I would have a negative 28 and a negative 1. Okay, so there we go. I've got x minus 28, and I've got x minus 1. Perfect, except for that's not really the problem that we started with. Remember, the problem we started with had this 7 out in front. And that 7 got multiplied. So now what we need to do is we need to go back and we need to divide it back out. So that 7 is what we need to work on. So if I first multiplied the end numbers by 7, I need to go back and I need to divide those end numbers by a 7. Okay? So when we divide them by 7, the option is either that they divide evenly or they're going to slide in front. So 28 divides by 7, I'd get x minus 4, because 28 divided by 7 is 4. But 1 does not divide by 7. So instead what it's going to do is it's going to slide in front of that x. So it's going to become 7x minus 1. So if it does not divide, it's going to slide right up there in front of that x. Okay, let's do another one of those. Since I kind of talked through that one, let's see if we can work through this next one a little bit quicker here. All right, so I see that there's a number in front. So what that means is I'm going to take that number and I'm going to multiply it to the back here. So really what I have is x squared minus 9x minus 10. So I want numbers that multiply to 10, and because it's negative, it's going to subtract to be 9. So I've got 1 times 10, 2 times 5. I'm going to be subtracting those. When I subtract those, I'm going to end up with 9 and 3. If I want a negative 9, that means I'm going to do 1 minus 10 to give me a negative 9, right? So I'm going to have 1 and negative 10. All right, now that's what I would like to answer, but remember I had this 5 in the beginning. So I need to divide them both by 5. 1 does not divide by 5, so that 5 is going to slide right up there in front of the x. So I'm going to have 5x plus 1. But this time, 10 does divide by 5, so I'd be left with x minus 2. Okay, so again, that's just one method. If you know another method, you're more than welcome to do whatever method makes sense to you to but some method to help you kind of organize your thoughts when you're trying to guess and check.